broadcasting, and we now have sound working. Um, I did not get the pages out today for Facebook or anything because I have a problem with my printer. I mean, with my computer, and all of you that are looking at them that are sitting in here, the print is very small. So it is what it is tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to fix that. I rebooted it 2 times. And that's all I'll admit to. I rebooted it 2 times. If it seems brighter in here, it should be. We had a guy up on a ladder today, and I was praying for him, and his helper was praying for him, and he was praying too. And he took out 10 of the 18 lights out here and got LEDs put in their place, but we have 4 on each side that we just couldn't get to. So we're going to Plan B tomorrow to see if we can get the other 8 done, and then won't have that problem anymore for years using those cool LEDs as well as being brighter. He also fixed the the foyer area. Just a lot of good things happen that we now have fixed that were not fixed before. So it's been quite a time. So we'll have prayer time at this point, and then we will have a short Bible study. If you have your prayer list, then we will go down through it quickly in case there are those people who maybe didn't get a copy. I'm asking, did we get to put anything online? I can't see you. Did we have anything online at all about the prayer list? Okay. All right. DJ Arrington, anybody have an update on him? John Avant, I understand he was in town today, has not had his bone marrow transplant yet, looking to have that soon. Lon and Shannon Baxter live in Virginia. They are friends of Renee and myself. Lon is facing some liver cancer, and unless some things can really happen, God does some miracle, the prognosis is not good. Sammy Bale, Angela Blunt, Amber and Landon Bach, which are I won't say children because they're actually teenagers that belong to Ashley. James and Lois Brewer, Jenny Brownlee, Vivian Bridgers, Donnie and Deanna Breland Bird, Teresa Cannon, and you feel free to give me an update if you know one on any of these. Kevin Carpenter, Tim Cole, Luann Kosser, I understand, is in the hospital with pneumonia, not doing very well. Here, right? Here in Charleston. So let's remember her. Barbara Criswell, Rodney and Teresa Cross, Jim Diamato, our friends in Delaware, Billy Early, Tammy and John Eden. Tammy was here with us this weekend. Jay Evans, I understand, did not need the pacemaker after all and was supposed to have gone home. I haven't heard any different. Sean Fox, Gary and Candy Freeman, which is Renee's uncle and aunt. talking to us about things that are going to be happening several hundred years at a time. And he says so himself, that he says, I really don't understand everything that I'm saying to you, but God has led me to say it. So in these chapter 11, the first 25, 30 verses, he talks about the different kings and the different things that happened and how they fell. So I chose to pick up at verse 20 with you, and I'll read right there. The one thing I want you to see that in what's already happened and what happens real quickly in verse 20 and 21 is that leaders come and leaders go. Now, I know we're in the, okay? These are pawns. Presidents are pawns. Kings are pawns. These people out here that are in the news, that are heading up these countries, they are not final authorities. They won't be around that long, no matter how young or how old they are. And their country may not be around that long. So we want to see the bigger plan here, okay? Then shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom. I thought that was kind of interesting, considering right now in the news, in a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in the anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person. Now, in your notes, I have explained to you something that I'll just kind of give it in a shorter form right here. All through the course of this part of it, he is going to talk about this one Roman Greco side of this ruling empires, okay? And particularly this one Antithesis, Epiphanes. He was really bad, okay? He was in there from about 175 BC to about 164 BC. Didn't last that long. But he was bad while he was around. He is the lens, if you will, that Daniel uses to show us the Antichrist, okay? Now, the Antichrist hasn't come yet. Now, we know from the Bible teaching that we have had Antichrist, and we will continue to have Antichrist, but the Antichrist, the one, the reincarnation of Satan into the flesh, that one has not come yet, okay? So what we're seeing and what we're going to read here is some of the characteristics of the trickery of those that have come and this one that is coming. He's a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty. He's not going to come from the bloodlines, okay? He's not going to be someone that everybody expected to be a ruler. And he shall come in peace. He shall come peaceably. But he's going to seize the kingdom by intrigue, not necessarily by force at the first. With the force of a flood, they shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the provinces, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall dispense among them the plunder, the spoil, and the riches, and he shall devise his plan against the strongholds. We are strongholds, folks, but only for a time. Verse 25, he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand as the king of the north, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacy shall destroy him. In other words, they're not going to be loyal to him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Then verse 27, both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table. Now, that's a fancy way of saying they're sitting there talking, they're acting like friends, and they're both lying between their teeth, so to speak, They're just trying to deceive each other. But it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. That's important for you and me to hear. God is in charge. He was in charge of all history. He's going to be in charge of all future events. And when he says so, things are going to happen. Now, while returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant. That's interesting, because we are the holy covenant, the new church, okay? So he shall do damage and return to his own land. Now, if I had time, I'd go back and tell you the story about when he tried to do something and all the other guys said, no, we're not going to support you. And actually, they defeated him and ran him back. He ran with his tail tucked back behind him, back to his own land. So he just decided he was going to be tougher king in his own land and not try to go outside the walls of his land. But that's not really the real meaning here. At the appointed time he shall return and go towards the south. Can't stand it. Got to go back. But it shall not be like the former or the latter, for ships from Cyprus shall come up against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So twice now he has been turned back, okay? So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. He has no regard for you, folks, if you name the name of Christ. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. And then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. We studied about that earlier in him going through the things that he saw in his earlier visions. And this is when the king actually went in and gutted a pig and de-blooded a pig, and then took the blood and put it all over the curtains, all over the mercy seat, all over the candles, the places that nobody else was going. And this was what they called the abomination of desolation. This was the most horrible thing that could happen to the Jews. But there's another meaning there. Those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery. In other words, if you're out here burning down the church, he's going to come up to you and say, great job. Let's get the rest of those Christians. When really, he could care less about you if you're persecuting Christians. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. That's what we got to do, folks. We got some great exploits that we've got to carry out. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. If we really know what's going on, we'd better be instructing many people, because time is going to run short and people are being deceived. Yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. There are going to be those who come to know Christ during the great tribulation who are going to die for taking their stand. Here again, depending on where you put your stance about the rapture, in my case, I'm putting my stance that church is not what we're talking about here in the great tribulation, but that's my opinion. But the people that come to know God in the first 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation that were spoken about Sunday, about being there wanting a cry out for their blood, and God gives them the white robe, and he says, just wait a little bit longer. These people are talking about here. Now, when they fall, they will be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. There are going to be people that are going to come in and act like that they're sorry that the church is in trouble. but they're only coming to find out more and to see if they can say, goody, 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 told you God wasn't who he said he was. And some of those of understanding shall fall, meaning some that do know the truth, to refine them, purify them, and make them white until the time of the end. Here we go. Here goes God making a statement through Daniel. Because it is still for an appointed time. Not over yet. Not over till God says it's over. So then we're going to focus here on this next part. Then the king shall do according to his own will. This is not Jesus. This is the Antichrist. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself. Sounds like Nebuchadnezzar, doesn't he? Sounds like a lot of people. Sounds like Hitler. You want to go on down through history? All of these people that became characteristics of Antichrist that I'll cover on another page in a minute. Shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper until the wrath has been accomplished. For a while, they're going to look like they're in control. They're winning. But when God finishes all of the other wraths, he uses the wrath of man that I told you about. Then there will be a period called the wrath of Satan. But then there's going to be 30 days of the wrath of God. And it's going to be final. Okay? He shall regard neither the God of his fathers nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his father did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. Okay, here's an allusion to those that see that in the Middle East, there's no regard for you women as humans. You're not supposed to be heard from, or you're not supposed to be involved. They don't care about your opinion. They don't care about whether you live or die. And you're just an object. You're a possession, okay? And they're talking about a God you and I have never heard of. Name starts with an M, okay? So you see these antichrists that are appearing in different forms, these nations that are doing their things. Here's Daniel talking about it in 400 and something BC, okay? And they're going to advance its glory, and they're out here making money. They've infiltrated all these countries, and they got their money, and the money's going back to the home country in electronic wires and stuff. They're amassing quite a thing. And it says here, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain, which is part of what's been going on in the Middle East forever, is they're trying to redivide the Holy Lands and other lands, okay? So then verse 40, at the time of the end. Now, you don't see Daniel talking that way that much, but if you look at the gospel writings, they talk about the hour, okay? It's the same thing. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. Now we're talking about Armageddon. With chariots, horsemen, and many ships, and he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand, Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. But I underline and I emphasize these next words. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. Praise God. Praise God. So we'll skip the bottom of page 2 there as to some comments I made about why is Daniel so interesting. It's because it's so doggone accurate. Everything that he said happened, and he said it with great detail. And there's some things that we can learn here that God's going to test us. And why is he doing it? To prove us, to strengthen us. And he is also sifting out. And what Jesus talked about, as I talked about in one of the other paragraphs, Jesus said, I'm not coming back until two things happen. One, there's a great falling away. And two, there's the appearance of the Antichrist. So if I'm a preacher, I would say the apostasy of the church and the appearance of the Antichrist. Okay? We're seeing the apostasy of the church. Okay? It may have come through a very unusual means in that there are, at one time, a very good reason that Marion Whitley didn't need to be here, or anybody else that was on in her years, his or her years, or were sick, or like a Renee had their immune system compromised. Okay, but there's been a shot. There's been ways to take vitamins and do all these things to prepare yourself and wear masks. And in some ways, that time has passed, and people have gone on about their other lives, but they hadn't come back to the church. The falling away has already started, okay? Jesus isn't coming until that takes place, okay? So then through this pestilence, through this disease, and through all of the craziness that's going on in our country and around the world, we are going to see a weeding out. There's going to be some tribulation before the great tribulation. There's going to be persecution. There's going to be the government taking away tax credits and doing all of this, and tax exemptions, and everything that it can do. And then they're going to formally come against you. And if you say anything against any group, boom, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be hauled into court, because of your statements you made. So we've got now those that are scared to talk about sins in the Bible because we're afraid some group of those that are committing those sins are going to haul us to court. You see? Okay? And then there's this thing now, say, okay, well, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's go back to where it used to be. Let's turn all the cameras and all the microphones, and everybody leave their cell phone in the car or somewhere else, and then we come in here and we really talk about sin, we talk about those things, and then nobody can get us. Well, that is deceiving by Satan. It is causing you and me to compromise telling the truth. And folks, if there's one thing that needs to be told right now, it is the truth. If ever there should be people coming to God's house to learn the truth and to stay reinforced in the truth, it's right now, because there is one that's coming that's going to give them the version of the truth, and they're already here in a lot of ways, and it's going to sound like the truth, and people are going to flock to it, and it's going to only end them up in hell. So it's happening. Everything that we see and hear is pointing to this. So I'm not going to take time to go over all of these, but I did list for you the deceptions that you should be able to point out yourself that are taking place. These are characteristics of the Antichrist and Antichrist who have already come. Number one is deceptiveness. Well, let's see. Let's modernize church. We don't have to meet this way. Let's do it that way. We don't have to sing these things. Let's sing those things. We don't have to use the Bible. We'll use things to go with the Bible, the Quran, other things. We don't have to do this. We can do that. There has been that slowly but surely. Okay, and then when you come to the doctrines, well, maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a virgin birth. Or maybe, just maybe, this didn't happen. Maybe Joseph's father was somebody else. Maybe. I mean, it just goes on and on, the diverted things that are out here. The Bible does talk about salvation through faith in Jesus Christ is the way. But hey, aren't we all going to get there someday together? You hear that? Aren't we all on the same path to God? These things that are happening. Listen to me, if you study history, and I don't claim to be a great history student, but I read a lot. It took 100 years for Europe to lose Christianity, and they've lost it. It's gone over there. And that's where it came from. It's gone. We are one generation away from losing it in America. One generation from losing it in North America. And we're seeing many, many, many who question what they've ever heard. Why? One, because they never learned. They only were here because they were made to come. They never had a personal encounter with Jesus. They never had a teacher that went upstairs and opened the Bible and taught them real Bible stuff. They just taught them stuff to make it to time for that Sunday to be over. They never had young teachers that talked to boys about sexual sins and girls about sexual sins and promiscuity and all of those things. They never had it happening in the home with mamas and daddies because mamas and daddies weren't there, whatever reasons. Do you see the attack? Let me tell you something. Armageddon, or the abomination of desolation that's spoken about here, it's not going to happen in some temple in Jerusalem. The new Israel is the new church. Okay? We need to understand that. The new Israel is the church. And we as individual Christians have been described in the Bible as living stones of the temple that's going to be a part of the new city, Jerusalem, where God is going to have Jesus, his son, and they're all going to dwell in this new Jerusalem. So what is Satan doing? He is trying to stain us with denial about sin, with denial about God's power and miracles. He's trying to believe what to, not hell in a handbasket. The world's going to Jesus. Now, part of the world is going to end up in hell, but the world is going back to Jesus, okay? And then, depending on what you and I have determined and done with our lives and given our life to Christ, is whether or not we go to heaven or hell. Not how much we gave, not how long we were here, not how many hours we worked, not what our mother and dad knew, nothing like that, okay? Salvation by grace through faith, okay? But then there's the autonomy. Oh my gosh, it reeks. It reeks on the TV. It reeks everywhere. I decide my life. You see these people that are going out and saying, I don't believe that you should stop me from wanting for having the right to have a divorce. I should control my life. If I want a divorce, a abortion, it's my business. That's what Nebuchadnezzar stood out there at Babylon and said, wow, what a great city I built. Right after that, he's gone. 7 years he was gone, you remember? Out in the wilderness, eating grass, nails grew long, hair, all that stuff. It's out there, folks. Autonomy. Believing that you can do it. Believing that you are the one. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about self-worth. There's a difference, okay? So I listed a few of these things for you to read later that he said. Blasphemy. Blasphemy. Anytime you exalt and you magnify yourself, that day. I won't say it was day one. Started that day. You can be like God. Okay, and then no loyalty. He will regard neither the God of his fathers nor the desire of women or regard any God. I don't need God. How many are saying that today? But let me tell you something. Like I said Sunday, when the sixth seal is opened, officially that day, every card-carrying atheist is going to tear up his cards and say, oh, no. God is real. When that sixth seal hits, that's the day atheism dies. And the law I read to you, he shall come to his end, and no one shall help him. And page 4 is the focus that I have already spoken about, so I will not go back over that. I just want you to understand that the battle is for you right now. The battle is for this church. The battle has been about not having a big view of God anymore. Coming into God's house and don't care how it looks. God's property, don't care how it is. Well, let's just get out of this neighborhood we live and let's move to a new area with more people like us. The attack has been there in America for so many years now. Well, let's compromise. Let's compromise. Let's reinvent God, in other words. He really is a good God. I mean, he understands. He understands that I can't do what others do. We reinvent God. Now, you know, ultimately, you can't reinvent God, but you know what I'm saying? We reinvent God in our mind as being a God who is not a jealous God, who is not going to have requirements of you, who is not going to accept lousy excuses. But then again, Satan has also convinced us that he's not a God that wants to put his arm around you and help you through your tough times. Satan wants to convince us that he's a God that doesn't care about you and your little finite world. And he does, very much so. He loves you. So you see, it's a double-edged sword on Satan's part. What God's not and what God is. Okay? Daniel chapter 11 is, in this last part of 11, he's giving you a picture 400 and something years before Jesus came of an antichrist. And we're in 2021, and the antichrist has not appeared yet. The apostasy of the church is taking place right now. The great falling away is taking place. The Antichrist is coming. I hope you're ready. I hope we're all ready. Because things are going to change really fast. And I'm be hopeful that I'm right, that the church will be raptured out of this mess. Let's pray. So, Lord, it's really imperative that the people who don't know you find out about you. So if we sit on our laurels and sit on our history, and we're not sharing Christ with anyone, and we're not doing anything missional, and we're not trying to be transformational, we just want to be transactional. We want to count how many people come, but we don't try to count how many people have been transformed by our witnessing and our missions. Then we have been duped. When it is more important to us to know numerical attendance than it is baptisms, we have been duped. When it's more important for us to make sure we can pay our bills than to live on the edge, depending on the next day's bread to keep us from starvation and bankruptcy. When we don't want to live that way for you, we've been duped. And I think about how many churches today have hundreds of thousands of dollars salted away, not being used for Christ. And time is ticking like a bomb. Forgive us. Forgive us. Wake us up. Make us mindful of our real commission you gave us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.